Hello, John Talley here with Partzilla.com, and as you can see, we've been doing some work on our 2005 Honda CRF450R. Now today, we're going to focus in on rebuilding the shock for this machine, and to do that, I'm going to be using a parts kit from Pivot Works, but I'm making one substitution. The bump stop, I want to go with the OEM instead of the one that they sent with it. Now this is a very comprehensive kit. It comes with your necessary O-rings, bushings, circlips, nuts, the spring, the bladder, even the rod guide case itself. Now the only other thing you'll need to pick up is some suspension fluid, and we're going with the OEM 5-weight from Honda. So now that we've got our parts assembled, let's look at the special tools that are going to be required to pull this off. Pretty short list. You will need a head setting tool, a 12mm bullet, and then a bladder extraction tool. What this allows you to do is actually screw onto the Schrader valve, grab it, and then extract the bladder. Now, any other just hand tools, I will call those out as I go along. That way you can minimize how many trips you have to make to your toolbox. Well, let's dive into this project. Now all I need to do is go remove the shock from the unit. There's only 2 bolts you need to remove, or actually 2 nuts, and they're 17mm. Get those removed and then just push the bolts straight out. Out she comes. All right guys, before we tear into this one, I'm just curious. I want to see what kind of pressure is still in it. It should have right at 145 PSI, if memory serves. We're going to connect our gauge up to it and just see what's in there. Because this one actually had a sticker on it, and it might have already been serviced. Now we'll definitely be able to tell that once we open it up, but I just want to see what the baseline is, see what kind of pressure we have. Now this isn't necessary for the procedure, I'm just curious. All right, that should do it. Yeah, I'd say she was a little low. What is that? 38 PSI? Yeah, I think we may have a problem in there. I guess we can go ahead and bleed it off then. Yep. Now she's at 0. If you're ever curious as to what your pressure is, this is the gauge you use to check it. Well, and we'll be using that when we go to refill it. All right guys, first thing we need to do is release tension on the spring, so we'll spray this down with a little bit of lubricant, and to hold it, let's go ahead and put it in just our regular vise and then break those rings free. And this doesn't look to be in too bad a shape, but we are going to go ahead and lube this up a little bit. That way it'll be easier to get those rings to let go. Good stuff here. There we go. Now it's enough pressure has come off so it can turn now. That's what I was waiting for. Because that other stuff we were just doing gets old quick. All right, now I think we're going to keep it in this vise a little bit longer. There are 2 sections of more or less seized together here. Then we take out this retention ring or stopper ring. Now, there we go. All right guys, next we're going to take it out of our regular vise over to our pivot vise. We're going to clamp down and remove both the bladder and then our rebound adjuster. We already know that we've discharged it, but let's make really sure. Now, if you hadn't discharged yours, Be careful at this point. If it was fully charged, you're talking about 145 psi. So you wouldn't just have your head over this when you were releasing the pressure. Now what we're wanting to do next is just use a socket, whatever size, and knock this end down far enough to reach in and remove this retaining clip that's going to be below it. A little bit encrusted, but I think she's going to release. There we go. Now we're going to use our valve stem tool to reach in there and grab it and then extract out the bladder. Okay, I've seen worse, but yes, that definitely needed to be replaced. That sticker that said somebody had been working on this, I don't believe it. This looks bad. Let's pour it out and take a peek. Yeah, that should be a nice golden color, very light, and that is the opposite. So I'm not believing that that this shock had been worked on before. So yes, this definitely needed to be addressed. Yeah, it's just not a good sign. Let's go ahead and run out our rebound adjustments, and you should be counting the clicks so you can get it back to where you started. All right, next, let's remove our dampener adjustment. That's going to be a 21 millimeter. All right, here's what has to happen next is I need to knock that cap off. There's a little notch on either side, and we're going to work our way back and forth. There she goes. There. Now we're going to reach in with a set tool, and what we're going to do is drive this intersection down, and there's going to be a retention ring, a lot like the one that was holding in the bladder. Once we remove the ring, then the shock can come apart with all the valves. That should do it. And there's our ring. There she goes. Now we should be able to remove it with a little bit of coercion. Big mess coming up. There we go. Definitely needed to be done. The biggest wear piece on there is this one. It's not supposed to look like that. And there's a big groove cut right in the middle of it where it is worn. Because that's basically your compression and your rebound. And this is the one puck that separates those two areas. You've got all your shims on either side, your shim stack. And that determines the rate of compression and rebound along with the viscosity of the oil. But when somebody talks about retuning their shim stack, they're talking about adding or removing shims. And if you're doing that, you really know what you're talking about, because that is a mystical little art, is understanding how all this really works. All right, she's pretty much disassembled. The last thing we have to do is get this back in the vise and remove this end nut. Now that is not the way Honda built it. So somebody has been into this one, because this should have been staked with a different style nut. So somebody been into this one, but it'd been a while. Now if you don't have a pivot vise like I'm using, you can just use a regular vise and grab it right here. We're almost there. It's going to take a lot of cleaning once we finish taking it apart. So all we're doing here is just removing this end cap nut. Our shim pack will come off. Make sure you note which direction it comes off so we can put it back, because we're going after this and this spring, as well as the bump stop. Don't forget about that. And yeah, the reason somebody had chamfered this edge, it was originally peened in 3 different areas on the original lock nut, and when they took it off, they had to more or less get you back down to the thread. So they reformed the top where the nut would go back on. That's how they did it. But, okay. But we put it back together. We're going to be using Loctite. Oh yeah, they use Loctite as well. Ooh, I got hot. All right, we're going to use this drift. And this is going to represent the same orientation as the shaft. Just make sure you keep all that together. Now we can remove the rod case guide. And pretty much this entire assembly will be replaced with a new one out of the kit. That was looking pretty rough. All right, kids, she's broken all the way down, but I have a lot of cleaning to do before we can start the assembly process. The cleaner I'm using is actually made for suspension components. I mean, contact cleaner does a great job. This leaves zero residue, and that's really important. Now, you can use contact cleaner for the outside, but when you're really deep cleaning the inside, especially the shim pack, you want to use a cleaner just for suspension components. Get out as much of the crud as you can. All right, that's looking good. And this one I've had to use several towels on. A lot of residual gunk in there. All right, guys, we got everything cleaned up, but there is one particular piece that we need to go in and replace the O-rings and the actual piston seal, and that is this guy right here. Now, you need to be very careful when we pull this off to keep your stack exactly like they are when we pull it off. And it is also imperative that this go back in the same direction. Now, take note of the size of the valves on this side versus that side. These are a little bit larger than this side, so you need to make sure that the small side goes back down toward this end. Now, what we're going to do is score this without hitting the piston. Take your time. There she goes. There. Now, once you cut that off, make very certain that you didn't damage the piston itself. And I didn't. We're looking good. Now let's get those two O-rings out of there. Now we're going to clean this up and then get the new ones on. Let's go ahead and dab in some suspension fluid. Coat our O-rings, then work them on. All right, guys, the real trick to getting this one on is we do not want to damage either the outer or the inner surface of this, so we need an edge to guide it over. So we're just going to use some electrical tape right on the edge of this lip, fairly tight, because we're only grabbing that outer edge. That's all we're after. And I did have to clean off the oil before I did this, otherwise it wouldn't stick. But we will recoat it once we get it on. Now I put some oil on the outside of the tape, on the inside of our piston seal. Now we should be able to walk it over that edge without damaging it. All right, she's in. Now we just need to remove our tape. All right, guys, if you use this technique, take your time, don't force it, and make sure you get all that tape edge out. Now, they do make bullets to make it a little bit easier. I believe this is 47 millimeters. You may want to invest in one of those, but I am pleased with it. Now, let's get her back onto the stack. That's your small side. This is your larger side. So if you remember, this small side goes down. Now we can get our shim stack. Be careful here because these are all still in order how they came off. Alright, now she's ready to head back on. We'll go ahead and put some oil on our shim stack to let it work in there, because the more we get on the surface now, the less air we're going to have to force out later. Alright guys, before we start putting our dampener rod together, I want to clean up these threads just a little bit. When I took off that bolt originally, it had a fair amount of resistance to it, and we've got our new one, but it really doesn't want to start cleanly, so we need to clean that up first. Otherwise we're just asking for trouble. And to do that, I'm using a cleaner slash rethreader from Lang. But before I do that, any debris that's going to come off of here cannot go into these two holes. So we're just going to run a little bit of tape around those two holes to where that can't happen. Especially make sure nothing gets dropped into the top as well. Now this is a little bit more gentle than a tap and die set, so you may want to invest in one of these or this particular kit. Yeah, it was just a little bit of debris there, and I was actually able to do this just with my fingers. But now that cleaned it up. Now let's see if she'll start. Oh yeah, makes all the difference. So now let's go ahead and remove our tape. I'm pleased with that, so let's start putting it together. Go with our seat, our bump stop, and don't forget your end cap. Now, at this point, we're going to use a seat guide. And it has just a little beveled edge right there that's going to guide the seals over the top of it. Now we are going to use a little bit of suspension grease, lightly coat it, and then maybe add in some oil as well. Now, a little bit more grease on the inside for our seal. And we can just rock it on there. Then our spring. And now we can bring in our stack. Remember, when we took it apart, we had it in the same orientation as this. So that's the same way we want to bring it back in. May take a little bit of wiggling to get all those shims and plates to line up. There we go. Now let's clean up our threads at the top. We're going to add a little bit of thread lacquer, red, and we don't want to put a lot on here because I don't want it mixing with the oil that we're about to put in this. All right, we're going back with the OEM nut on the end, and then we're going to torque it to 27 foot-pounds. That's it. Now, to finish it off, we're going to peen it in at least 2 areas. I think they call it 3, but I think that's a bit overkill. That should do it. All right, we'll leave that alone for a moment. Now we're going to take our housing reservoir and the housing, put it in our clamp, and start assembling the bladder. So we've got our new bladder. Let's put it on our cap with the Schrader valve in the middle of it. Just working around with your fingers. Now to make it a little bit easier to get in there, we're going to coat this and the inside of the bore with a little bit of fluid. And we want to push it down just a little bit below that groove, get our retaining clip in there, and then we're going to pull it back up into position. Now, since we've already got this in the correct position, let's grab our damper assembly and then go ahead and install it. All right, if you're going to do this with your bare hands, just make sure they're really clean. We want to coat down our O-ring and our piston, and at least a little bit down in the bore. All right, now let's go. May have to rock it around a little bit. Don't let it get too off axis. There we go. There she goes. Yahtzee. All right. Now, same deal as before. Let's grab our setter and get it to go a little bit below. Then we can get that retention clip in there. There we go. Now let's work in our retainer. And they provided a new one in the kit. Listen for it to click in a couple of times probably. There we go. Make sure it's in all the way around. Now we can pull up on the shock and get it to seat. Next, we've got our two drain holes here. We want to make sure that those are in line with the top mount. So it needs to go about right there. Go ahead and tap it in place. All right, now let's start filling it up. There's basically two chambers that we need to get all the air out of. First is going to be the dampener itself. Make sure that your rebound and compression is adjusted all the way down to make it a little bit easier to slowly move the dampener through its stroke. Once we don't see any more air bubbles coming out, then we can put 7 psi into the bladder chamber. That's going to force out any air that's around the bladder and have it come out. At that point, we can top it off again and then put in our dampener adjuster and tighten it down to torque. Now, I can go ahead and warn you, be prepared for this thing to spit out at you, because it takes a fair amount of force to move it through its stroke. And if you don't do this slowly, it is going to spit some out at you. Not that I've ever had that happen. All right, we are at the bottom of the stroke, so we should be able to draw it in as we bring it back. Give it a little tap. I want to bring it back through another stroke, but it is going to try to spit out at me. If I go faster, then the valves can let it go by. So far, that's looking pretty good. All right, that is at the bottom of its stroke. Now we can go back. I think that's got it. I'm fairly certain that the bladder is just about full. To make sure, we're going to put a pump on it and only bring it up to 7 psi. Give it a little tap. All right, here's the last messy part. If it's not already topped off, go ahead and top it back off. We're going to put a little bit of fluid around our O-rings, and then we want to gently lower this in, and it's going to force out fluid as we do this, but that's okay. That's actually what we want. Just do it slow so it has a chance to fill. There we go. I think we're going to be in good shape here, guys. Yeah, there's a lot going on in a shock. Now we need to reach in here and torque this to 21 foot-pounds, and the tool I use to accomplish this is just a regular box end wrench, but I had this little adapter on the end of it. Now, by using this tool, as long as I've got the torque wrench at 90 degrees, it won't matter the distance that I am out. So just make sure you've got it at 90 degrees and it'll be fine. If you don't have one of these tools, I suggest you should pick one up, because I use it often. especially for circumstances like this where you've got to reach in and torque a bolt that you can't get a wrench in there. Well worth it. So let's get our spring back on. Now if you wanted to, you could go ahead and recharge the nitrogen now, but I will do that later. Alright, got our seat in there. Now we just need to put this retention ring in. Make sure it's seated all the way around. Bring the seat back over it, and she's in. Well, all right, guys, that's going to wrap this one up. All you need to do now is either send it off or take it to your local dealership and have them charge it with nitrogen to 145 psi, and then reset all your settings as far as your compression and your rebound and setting the sag. Well, listen, if you need these or any other parts for your machine, why don't you come see us at Partzilla.com and we can get you taken care of. If you have any questions or comments, just leave them in the section below and I'll do my best to answer them. And hey, if you like what you see, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you can keep up with whatever I'm working on next. We just want to say thank you for shopping here with us at Partzilla, and we will see you in the next video. Y'all have a great day.